I'll be showing you how to compile your Rust app to WASM so it can run on the web. To do this, we need to bring in several tools to a Rust application. One is a web server to actually view the application, so I'm using Webpack for that. In Webpack, I'm using the HTML Webpack plugin to generate basic HTML page that contains all of our assets. The other plugin is wasm-pack plugin. This automatically installs and sets up wasm-pack, which is the tool that packs your Rust application to WASM. We need to enable WebAssembly in the configs so Webpack can bundle it. There's also the dev server, which runs on port 9000 using the dist folder. Then we output the entry points into the dist folder, and we provide an entry point of index.js. If you look in the cargo.toml file, a couple things. I set the crate type to be cdylib because we're outputting a dynamic library with a target of WASM. The js-sys and the web-sys crates are for accessing JavaScript and web APIs in Rust. I'll leave a link to both of them in the description. So this is the web-sys, which again just provides web API access like window.fetch or WebGL, alert, interval, and all sorts of other web APIs. Then the js-sys provides access to bindings and JavaScript, so things like object or array, functions, etc. The wasm-bindgen contains helpers that are used basically as the glue between Rust and WASM. If we look in the project, you'll see there's this lib.rs, since we're producing a library that can be called from JavaScript. In this file, you'll see this extern. With the help of wasm-bindgen, it tells Rust that these functions exist in JavaScript and that we'll be using them. Since we're outputting a library, anything not defined by or used by functions with this wasm-bindgen macro will be stripped. In this case, we'll be outputting two functions, greet right here and mouse listener. To see what these functions do, let's start the web server. Just run npm run start. This will start the web server on port 9000. If we look at the app and then refresh it, you'll see it'll alert with hello world. And then when we click OK, it will print to the console the mouse event and the position of the cursor. That website makes use of both of these functions. So in the greet case, it calls the alert with a string or a str passed in, and then passes hello, comma, and the string that's passed in to the alert web API. The mouse listener, it gets the window from the web-sys crate, then it gets the document off the window. We create a closure that will use the console log, which is again defined up here in the extern. So we get the console namespace because we're trying to do console.log, and log is part of the console namespace. We say there's this log function that takes in a str. Then this number on the console log is just how many parameters you're passing in. We need to convert it to a JS value that's a reference. So we give it a string, then do .n2 and pass it in as a reference. Same with these three parameters in the log3. This closure struct comes from the wasm-bindgen crate, and it will convert the Rust closure to a JavaScript closure. To do that, it needs to leak the Rust memory into JavaScript and have the JavaScript garbage collector manage the memory instead of Rust. So to do that, we pass it in as an unchecked ref, and then we call forget on it, which will leak the memory. Basically just meaning it's no longer managed by Rust and instead it's managed by JavaScript. The callback closure that we define up here needs to match what the closure takes in, which is a boxed mutable function that we also define will take in a mouse event, and we use this mouse event in our closure. Now that we've defined our functions that we want to use in Rust, let's actually pull them in and use them on the web. So to do that, again, we're using this index.js file as our entry point. We load from this package directory, which is where the wasm-pack outputs the wasm module, and it outputs it into this index wasm that's then imported in the index.js. So we can then just use it as import from the package. We then get the wasm module, and we can call the functions that we defined in Rust. So in this case, we call greet, pass in the string of world, and then we call the mouse listener, which will then add a event listener on the document that listens for mouse movements. And again, that's set right here. So we do document set on mouse move as the event listener for the document. And if we go to the page, again, you'll see the greet hello world and that mouse event listener in action printing out to the console. So if you're converting your Rust application to use WASM, you would create an entry point with a wasm-bindgen and then basically make sure the rest of the application will be able to be compiled to WASM, and it'll give you, Rust should just give you errors for the parts that don't, and you'll have to go through and fix them. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let me know.